All right, what is up, guys? So I just wanted to touch base on two articles that recently came up in Variety. I put the links for the articles down in the description for the video. But the big one, the one that I just saw this morning, was Disney is actively looking for projects that would attract back a young male audience. Wow. I mean, that shouldn't come as a shock to anybody if you've been paying attention to Disney for the last, God, almost 12 years. I want to say it probably started back in 2015 with Star Wars, The Force Awakens, the very first one that came out. Now, it's not like that movie is exclusively made for girls, but they've definitely paid more attention to their female audiences of late. And look, some people argue that Disney has always been a girls' brand. It's true, in the sense that they have always made like Disney princess movies. Like princess movies for Disney is basically a staple of their company, right? However, my counter argument to that is think about like Toy Story, for instance. Like think about all like the classic Pixar movies. Like those are movies that myself and other guys included grew up on. Like everybody loved Buzz Lightyear and Woody. And it's not like Disney wasn't a part of my childhood. Like Disney was a huge part of my childhood. And it wasn't because they were making movies exclusively for girls like Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is one of my favorite animated movies of all time. It's not just about Lilo, it's also about Stitch. It's in the title. So Disney Variety comes out with this article saying that Disney is looking for more male leading projects. And I mean, like, look, set aside the culture wars and your political ideologies and whatever it is that you believe in. I think a lot of this just comes down to, and I've said before, people who are in business that do not deserve to be in business. You know, a lot of Hollywood, and it should be pretty obvious to most people, is very liberal. There's nothing wrong with being a liberal. I myself, I have some very liberal leaning ideologies. On the other hand, I also have some very conservative leaning ideologies. I'm very much in the middle, which gives me a good mindset to see it problems from both sides. And oftentimes, what I find is most people, regardless of what they identify as, are usually pretty much in the middle. You know, like most people are socially pretty liberal, but also they don't like paying a lot in taxes. You know, home prices are too expensive. Most people can agree with that, unless you got all the money in the world. But I digress. So, most of Hollywood is very liberal. And that's because if you live in LA, most of LA is very liberal. For whatever reason, the industry attracts very liberal leaning people. I would know this because I currently am in LA. I've lived in LA off and on since about 2014. So, LA is not, while a lot of culture does sort of stem from LA, and you can make the argument that a lot of what inspires the rest of the world, at least in terms of entertainment, does come from LA, is not a reflection of the rest of the world. So a lot of these executives and a lot of these people in Hollywood, they make entertainment based off of what they see in LA. You know, they listen to the actor that has a trans child, and they listen to the girl with blue hair that works as a barista at Starbucks who wants to write the next great feminist action hero movie. They listen to these people, and these people, they're not everybody, okay? Like LA is not the rest of the world. That's the problem. A lot of these people, they're not very worldly. Maybe they're well traveled, but they really don't understand people, would be my argument. Because when you think about it, if you look at a lot of the entertainment that's coming out and it's reflected in the box office and the amount of people watching it, people just aren't going to see movies the way they used to. And you can make the arguments, like streaming has kind of crushed that. And there were the COVID lockdowns that slowed down the momentum from 2019 when the box office was I mean, Avengers Endgame came out in 2019. That made all the money. There hasn't been a movie like that, or a movie that has come close to that in a while, besides the Avatar movies. But let's just say, like in 2019, 9 movies make $1 billion. And since 2019, only like 5 movies have made $1 billion in the last 6 years. That's a big problem. Now, Disney thinks that male audiences have left them. And that really shouldn't be a shock because, to be honest, Disney is not making things that I can resonate towards. Now, they've made a lot of things that resonate towards specific niches and certain political ideologies and cultural ideologies, but this is not a reflection of the greater world. You know, most of the world cannot relate to a movie like Elio. They just can't. And it's also just not a very good movie. It does not get near the heights of something like, you know, Toy Story. And even when Disney does try to make a good movie, like, you know, the Thunderbolts, the new Avengers, and the Fantastic Four, those are fine movies. They're not bad movies. They're fine. They're not great movies. They're watchable enough and entertaining enough. But they're not, they're nowhere near Iron Man. Like me, I can relate to Iron Man. That's a very flawed, masculine person, right? Tony Stark is a very flawed, masculine figure. There's nothing really masculine about the new Avengers, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four. There are central male figures in these movies, but as far as men go, I have nothing to relate to them to. And part of this is because Hollywood has gotten in its head that this idea that masculinity is toxic. Okay. But just because you don't necessarily agree with it doesn't mean that it's bad. You know, there are a lot of masculine traits that actually make somebody a good person. And if being masculine is such a bad thing, then why is it that so many of the female protagonists that Hollywood write about are actually very masculine? See, they don't have a problem with masculinity. They just have a problem with who's portraying it. That's why a lot of these heroes that we have, female-led heroes, are pretty masculine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, how do you flaunt your masculinity? How do you flaunt that sort of alpha persona? You know, can you make it tolerable? And you can make somebody a flawed person. Like Tony Stark in the beginning of Iron Man is a very flawed individual. But he uses his weaknesses to his strength. And if he doesn't, then he overcomes such things. His cockiness, his cavalierness, you know, that's what makes him him. But he's also, through the course of his arc, he becomes someone entirely different. You know, he goes from this philandering playboy into a father. You know, would they do the same for someone like Captain Marvel? I mean, these are just traditional arcs that they've sort of been lost on Hollywood. This understanding of humanity, this understanding of characters and growth, you know. And look, people are really not vibing with girl bosses. And look, it's not that we don't like girl bosses. Like, I grew up watching the Alien movies. I love Sigourney Weaver. I love Linda Hamilton in the Terminator movies. The difference between those characters and the characters you see now is these are very human characters. They're people who are put in these incredible circumstances where it's very likely they're going to die. And they're flawed. They're not invincible people. They're not Mary Sue's. They're very human. And somehow they're able to overcome the obstacles that are given to them. Hollywood just doesn't simply understand this. They just think that, like, you have to present somebody that, you know, it is flawless and they're perfect just the way they are. And the only thing that's holding them down is society. Like, these are just, whether you believe in that or not, these are very counter ideas to just the sort of world you live in, right? And just life itself, you know, like, okay, you could have the mindset that life is bringing you down and you're perfect just the way you are, but you try and carry that attitude in real life, it doesn't get you very far. You have to be a humble person, and you have to accept that maybe there's room for you to grow and there are things that you can do to become a better person. Otherwise, if you're just perfect the way you are, then there's no chance for learning. There's no chance for having an arc. There's no being human. There's no humanity in those kind of characters. So Disney is looking for more male-oriented projects to try and attract males in. No surprise, they alienated their audiences with the kind of stuff that they were making. Not all of it was terrible, you know. I mean, they made a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, which was great. And look at the characters in that. They're not girl bosses. They don't have the archetype of the typical girl boss that you see in a traditional Marvel movie, where they're just better than the male in every single way. You know, you either make movies that people can relate to make money, or you're catering to a very specific kind of niche. And the problem is that if you live in LA, you're surrounded by that niche all the time. Because more than likely, your inner circle and the circle around you and the people that exist in the world around you in LA are very different from the types of people you see in regular life. And if you go into a project with those kind of ideas, you're going to come out with something that the vast majority of people do not resonate with. They will not watch it. They do not care. They don't want to know, you know, what's the next movie you're going to make after this. They just do not care about these kind of things. That's why you need to go back to making movies that people can resonate with as a whole. It doesn't matter if it's led by a girl. It doesn't matter if it's led by a guy. Just make movies about people. You know, Captain Marvel is not a person. And if you met her in real life, you would not like her. If you met Tony Stark in real life, you may not like him, but you do admire him. And by the time his journey is complete, you love him because he becomes a good father who sacrifices himself for the rest of the world. I can't name a single girl boss that does that. Even the Star Wars movies where like Rey Skywalker, everything is on the line. There's no humanity there. There's really nothing there. She's all powerful. She doesn't really go through an arc. Her journey from where she starts to where she ends, she is basically the same person, but with a different name. A name that, in all honesty, a lot of people don't agree she deserves. You know, she's not Luke Skywalker. She's not even Anakin Skywalker. She's none of those things. There's nothing interesting there. If you had taken a girl and put her through a similar arc, then we would have related to it. But unfortunately, you had to bring down all the male characters around her and then also build up this character that nobody has any relatable quality to. So nobody's going to watch it. And when they do watch it, if a bunch of people do get convinced to watch it, they are just going to leave. This is what happened to Disney. Disney started off really strong. They had the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they had Star Wars. All these movies made a ton of money. And then they started becoming more and more like themselves. They made movies for the executives and the creatives who make them. They didn't make them for the audiences. They got so narcissistic and caught up in their own egos that they assumed that we were all going to buy the things that they wanted us to watch. And look, it's a dangerous thing to say this. You know, it's dangerous to say these things, but it's almost like you have to give a child a dose of reality. All right. The world will not cater to you. You cannot just eat cookies and milk as much as you want. You cannot just act like a brat as much as you want and think that the world revolves around you, because it doesn't. The rest of the world and most good people want to get on with their lives and contribute to society and raise their families and be good people. They don't want to make things all about themselves. And if you do make something all about yourself, and if you do hold yourself on this pedestal where you're better than everybody else and everybody else is keeping you down, you are an unlikable person. I said it before. If Captain Marvel existed as a real person, you would not like her. She would be self-centered, all-powerful, doing whatever she wants, and not caring about what anybody else thinks. These seem like traits that you may resonate with at first, but if you meet someone like that, you will not like them. And that is why a lot of people in Hollywood, the more you get to know them, they come off as unlikable. If Pedro Pascal was as big as a star as Hollywood likes to pretend he is, then the Fantastic Four wouldn't have flopped. And Pedro Pascal, every movie he makes would make $1 billion. It does not. Even Tom Cruise, someone who's very likable, it's probably pretty arguable that the last Mission Impossible movie flopped. And he's probably the most likable guy in Hollywood. Times are different. The world does not revolve around LA. LA, they used to make movies for the kinds of audiences that they're making in mass now. You know, you can make a movie like Brokeback Mountain. It costs like maybe 20, $30 million to make, and you'd probably make your money back because most people, they can't understand the story. It's probably not going to relate to them because the vast majority of the world is not, you know, homosexual. Most guys are not homosexual. Most girls are not lesbian. But if you make a good movie and it's well done and, you know, people could sort of relate to that, but you can't make a movie with the kind of ideologies of that movie for like $200 million. To do that would be insane. And it's not because people are homophobic. It's just because you are catering to a specific niche that the vast majority of people, and you're lucky that a lot of people in the United States would accept a movie like that, because you make a movie like that, you show it to people in the Middle East, they might kill you. Depends on what country you're in, but yeah, they might kill you, you know? If you think the United States is a very intolerant place because they didn't flock to see the Marvels, my God, maybe you're well traveled, but you obviously don't understand the rest of the world, right? This is and they have to understand this because Disney is the same company that also censors certain parts of their movies and promotional material in different countries like China. Look up the Chadwick Boseman Black Panther movie. Look up the poster for that in China. It hides Chadwick Boseman's face. And it's because they understand that movies with black leads typically don't do very well in China. And why? I don't know. I mean, I've never been to China, but I would only assume that if you have to hide the lead character's face for your movie to try and trick people into seeing it, maybe they don't really like black people. Sorry. They probably don't. Sorry. I'm just going to go out of a limb. I'm going to put 2 and 2 together and say it. Can Disney bounce back? Maybe. But you have to be authentic and you have to cater to the market, not just in your immediate world, but across states. You have to make a movie for people in North Dakota. You got to make a movie for people in New York. You got to make a movie for people in Florida. You got to find a way to make movies that everybody can watch, or at least most people would watch and enjoy. Right now, Disney is not doing that. And it's pretty obvious from the Variety article. They haven't been doing that, and they know that they need to course correct. They're not outright saying, hey, we fucked up, but, you know, they're pretty much saying that, yeah, things have got to change. And that brings me to the other article. Several Hollywood executives are now pivoting more towards vertical dramas. I'm pretty positive that most people are not super aware of vertical dramas. They're popular enough that they seem to be shooting in LA all the time. I act in them pretty consistently. I play a lot of bad guys in vertical dramas. But they're pivoting towards these things. And what I can tell you about vertical dramas is they will touch on things that Hollywood will not touch. You know, they will have a vertical drama that centers around a very toxic man and very flawed women that are constantly in danger. And they do very well. I mean, my buddy was in a vertical drama. It's got over 50 million views. And look, the quality of them is not the greatest, but they do portray men as pretty masculine, you know, arguably very toxic, but people are watching them. A lot of people are watching them. You know, maybe that's something Hollywood could learn from, is just make very flawed people, you know, make things sexy again. I don't know. These vertical dramas, they're very sexual for the most part. like super sexual. Just look up any vertical drama on Instagram. I'll give you one right now. Go to Playlet on Instagram. Look up Playlet on Instagram and see what kind of verticals they make. You'll be shocked because Hollywood doesn't make stuff like that anymore. And if they do, it's usually not very good and a dime a dozen. But yeah, look up Playlet on Instagram. You'll know what I'm talking about. Pretty salacious. And a lot of people are watching them. You know, maybe that's where all the men and that used to be watching Disney movies are flocking to. But probably not, because mostly girls watch those. But hey, that's a testament to what females are watching right now. They're not watching Rey Skywalker. They're watching some girl get kidnapped and saved by some toxic masculine dude with perfect hair and eyes and body type. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap things up here. I'm going to get on with my day, but those are my thoughts. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Enjoy life, and let's hope that better things are to come. Ciao.